Ready? Okay. All right. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Some of you may have originally been invited to a meeting about the renters' rights, the historic renters' rights that we won during the decade that Socialist Council member Kshama Sawant was in office in Seattle City Council. And we were going to originally talk about, the planned attacks on those renters' rights by the current Democrats on the Seattle City Council, who have talked about attacking these renters' rights for months and months now. But that plan was overshadowed by really horrible recent developments. So on Monday, there were 3 egregious arrests of 3 anti-genocide protesters. They were protesting against the genocide, and particularly the role played by Democratic Congressman Adam Smith. He was holding a town hall, really a fake town hall, in Renton, Washington on Monday. This was a town hall with a pre-selected audience. This is because Adam Smith is afraid of being held accountable for the war crimes that he's committed in supporting the genocide in Gaza. And so, of course, that needed to be disrupted. And so Workers Strike Back mobilized a protest at that town hall, a peaceful protest where we handed out flyers about Adam Smith's numerous war crimes. And because of the pressure that these politicians are facing from the movement broadly, we've seen arrests of such protesters all around the country. They, shut this down by arresting 3 of our members, Calvin M. and Patrick, who are here today. So you'll hear from them. But so this event was changed to talk about fighting back against this repression, fighting back against the genocide in Gaza and the mass starvation campaign of the Israeli state at this time. So that's going to be our main topic today. And thank you everyone for coming. We're going to start off first, though, with a political tribute to Workers Strike Back member Linda D., who recently passed away. So I'll hand it over to Josie for that tribute.
Workers Strike Back member Linda D. passed away on July 24th at the age of 81. Linda was a lifelong political fighter and embodied unwavering principles and fierce dedication to the fight for ordinary people. Linda became a member of Workers Strike Back in March 2024 when we were active in supporting the campaigns to unionize Amazon and were engaging in the uncommitted movement, and importantly, with the Abandon Biden campaign, which later became the Abandon Harris campaign. Alongside Abandon Harris, Workers Strike Back was encouraging people to not support genocide accomplice Joe Biden in the Democratic primary, talking about the need for a new party and helping build the biggest vote for Jill Stein, the strongest left independent anti-war candidate in the presidential election. Eleanor Seinigan, who is a Workers Strike Back member and organizer in Olympia, wrote a tribute to Linda, which she shared at our national meeting last Sunday, that I would like to share for her on her behalf. I met Linda this May while phone banking to turn people out for our fight back against the all-Democratic Seattle City Council when they tried to greatly weaken the city's ethics laws as the first step towards dismantling the historic renters' rights Kshama won during her tenure in the council. As many here know, Workers Strike Back forced Seattle Democrats to back off. Linda wasn't able to attend in-person events due to health issues, but she was at the June meeting via Zoom and voted yes on launching the Free Healthcare Tax the Rich and Send Kshama to Congress campaigns. Moments after the meeting ended, she donated $5,000 to Workers Strike Back. Over the next month, Linda ended up on my call list during 2 more phone banking shifts, and I got to know more about her political life. She was clear-eyed and fiery when we talked about politics, unapologetically peppering her thoughts with a swear word or 2 while expressing her frustration with the Democrats and their many betrayals. And she was equally passionate in her support for Kshama for Congress. She lived in Seattle for nearly 50 years and attended dozens of protests and actions over the decades. When I thanked her for a donation during one of our calls, she said, "I'm just so grateful for everything you all are doing." Linda saw the work of building Workers Strike Back with fighting campaigns, as well as the routine tasks of phone banking, tabling, hosting community meetings, and creating other opportunities for people to get involved as necessary to build a movement with the strength to truly take on the ruling class and their political parties. After 50 years of being politically active and traveling the road to complete disillusionment in both political parties and our entire capitalist system, our work brought Linda hope that a society that no longer relies on exploiting people and our planet could actually be realized someday. Linda followed local, state, and national politics closely. When it comes to electoral politics, she started to see the Democratic Party's role as representatives of big business and the corporate elite, not working people, the way many of us did. Getting swept up in Obama's promise of change, then becoming disenchanted with him and the Democratic Party when he oversaw the bailout of Wall Street in the wake of the Great Recession while leaving working people to fend for ourselves. And then again, when he and the Democratic Party shut the door on Medicare for All and passed the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, making health care more expensive for millions of people while dumping billions of dollars into insurance companies' coffers. And like many of us, Linda went through the same process of disillusionment with Bernie, AOC, and other so-called progressives like Washington State Democratic Party politician Pramila Jayapal. For Linda, their endorsement of Harris and voting for to fund Israel's Iron Dome showed their true role as gatekeepers in providing cover for the Democratic Party's betrayal of the anti-war movement and constant selling out of the working class. When Workers Strike Back voted to launch and support Kshama for Congress, Linda knew exactly who our opponent Adam Smith was, as well as his long history of actively fighting against working people and the social justice movements she fought alongside. In 1999, while Smith was voting for the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, which deregulated banking and was responsible for the 2008 Great Recession, Linda was supporting the protests against the World Trade Organization conference in Seattle. Smith then voted to bail out Wall Street in the recession, along with 171 other Democrats, instead of the millions of ravaged working families. While Smith voted for Republican President George W. Bush's Patriot Act in 2001, which unleashed a new wave of mass surveillance and attacks on peaceful protest movements, Linda was active in the anti-war and nuclear non-proliferation movements. While Smith voted for the Iraq War in 2002, Linda protested against it in the streets of Seattle. Linda was still protesting the war when, a year later, Smith voted to create ICE as part of his support for Bush's Homeland Security Act and the bipartisan assault on immigrants. Smith's shameful record of selling out working people over and over again is a big reason Linda supported Kshama for Congress. But it was Kshama's unprecedented record of wins through her city council office that fed the palpable excitement Linda expressed while talking about the congressional campaign. Wins like an Amazon tax, which is raising hundreds of millions of dollars every year for affordable housing, and the subsequent increase of the tax by $20 million for youth mental health services. So stopping the Seattle Housing Authority from evicting thousands of public housing tenants, making abortions free in Seattle, and so many more. Several times during our conversations, Linda said, "I'm just so sad I won't be here to see her win." When Linda was diagnosed with Alzheimer's several months ago, she chose death with dignity, which Washington state law allows thanks to movements that fought for it, to avoid the inevitable cognitive decline and suffering the disease would have brought to her. I had the honor of staying in touch with her by email as she prepared to voluntarily stop eating and drinking in order to end her life on her own terms, and then visiting her at the home where she was deeply supported and cared for by the all-volunteer team at A Sacred Passing during her dying process, which she moved through with incredible grace, her spark and sense of humor burning bright throughout. There is certainly no guarantee that we will win Kshama's campaign for Congress. We do have a real chance of winning. And we've shown that independent working class campaigns can win. Kshama won all 4 of her city council elections. But it will take tens of thousands of people fighting for us to win our election for Congress, no matter where you live in this country. We are all up against the Zionists and the entire mass of the billionaire class. We have to fight like hell to win. We owe it to people like Linda, to the millions of American working and poor people who take the brunt of capitalism every day, and most immediately, to the Palestinian people of Gaza. Linda's death is a powerful example of grabbing fate with both hands when faced with a seemingly impossible task.
So Yeah, our agenda today, we're going to have an introduction from former Seattle City Council member and socialist on the City Council for a decade, Kshama Sawant, who's now running the strongest anti-war independent socialist campaign for U.S. Congress against warmonger Adam Smith. We'll have her introduce the discussion. Then Patrick, one of the people who was at the protest on Monday, will talk to us about a financial appeal. Then we'll have a discussion with a few speakers from groups that have showed up in solidarity, as well as taking a general stack. And then we'll do volunteer signups and conclude the meeting. So with that, I'll hand it over to Kshama to take it away. Thanks.
If we were to ask what is the most important story today in the United States, I'll tell you. The story, in my view, is basically the same internationally. Part one of the story is working people are angry, and rightfully so. Tens of millions of American people and hundreds of millions and really billions internationally are furious at the cost of living crisis, at the meager gains won by working people in the past being snatched away and replaced with a collapsing social safety net, low wages, and dead-end jobs. They are angry at both parties of the billionaires here in the US. The Democratic Party's approval rating has cratered to its lowest point in more than 3 decades, according to a new Wall Street Journal poll. People are angry at Trump and the Republicans also for the disastrous tariffs, for the horrendous ICE arrests, detentions, deportations of immigrant community members, for Trump's broken promise that he would not cut Medicare and Medicaid. But what's staggering, though not exactly surprising, is that 63% of American voters hold an unfavorable view of the Democratic Party. That is far worse than the approval rating of Trump or the Republican Party. There is a decisive shift in public opinion as a whole. We've just seen the Seattle primary elections where corporate Democrat and incumbent Bruce Harrell is trailing his progressive opponent in the primary, which is a sign of how much trouble he's in. Right-wing city attorney Ann Davison and conservative pro-big business council member Sarah Nelson are also deeply underwater in the primary. Both parties are in deep crisis on every level. The tide of opinion on issue after issue has turned against them, and perhaps none more so than on the genocide in Gaza. A poll released very recently by Gallup shows that less than a third of Americans approve of the Israeli state's actions in Gaza, a record low. Only 9% of young people under the age of 35 approve of the Israeli state. This has never happened before in the US. The genocide and the mass starvation of Gaza are exposing to millions of people the brutality of US imperialism. People are understanding that the genocide would be impossible if the Israeli state wasn't awash in funding for weapons and deadly machinery from the United States. This has always been a bipartisan agenda. Democratic and Republican parties both have sponsored this genocide with tens of billions of dollars of military aid, and it began under Democratic President Biden. Adam Smith, our opponent, has done exactly this for nearly 30 years. We just saw Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell and other Democratic senators like Cory Booker and Chuck Schumer pose for a photo with Benjamin Netanyahu, the butcher of Gaza. That's part one of the story. It is in this context that courageous and peaceful anti-war, anti-genocide activists are facing brutal repression. On Monday, as was mentioned, 3 anti-genocide activists who are also worker strike back members were arrested in Renton, near here, while peacefully handing out leaflets and chanting in an outdoor public space at a community college. Those arrested were Calvin, M, and Patrick, who are here. They were all released on bail, but they faced charges. Are we going to accept that?
No.
Are we going to demand that all charges are dropped? Yes. It is all the more egregious that they were arrested while carrying out a peaceful protest at a town hall by Democratic Congress member Adam Smith, who has voted repeatedly to fund Israel's genocide in Gaza and against the United Nations food aid for Gaza. Adam Smith funding a genocide and acting to prevent food aid, that's the crime, not activists peacefully protesting the genocidal Adam Smith. The tide of international public opinion turns decisively against the genocide and mass starvation in Gaza, and not only against the Israeli state, but also against Western imperialism, and yet the brutal repression continues. And these three are among thousands who have been facing repression. In a particularly disgusting example, the administration at Columbia University recently announced sweeping sanctions against students who have protested against the genocide. Can you imagine sanctions against university students? The sanctions include expulsion, probation, degree revocation, and suspension ranging from 1 to 3 years. Nearly 80 students have been suspended or expelled. Workers' Strike Back stands in solidarity with every single one of these courageous students. The question I want us to answer is, how is it possible that this brutal retaliation against and repression of peaceful protest movements still goes on and in some ways is escalating when the vast majority of Americans are against the genocide? That's where we need to look at part 2 of the story, which is the gaping chasm between, on the one hand, that anger of tens of millions of people, and on the other hand, the leadership that's on offer to organize a fight back. Look at the progressive Democrats. 2 weeks ago, AOC and most progressive Democrats, including Pramila Jayapal, voted against an amendment that would have cut $500 million in military aid to Israel. I mean, Adam Smith also voted against it. Most of the Democrats did. But I'm not mentioning him because we know he's an out-and-out warmonger and genocider. What we need to understand is that the progressive Democrats did as well, except for a small handful of them who voted for that amendment. That vote against the amendment to cut $500 million, that's a pro-genocide vote. These politicians, these progressive Democrats, they really are the progressive establishment. Their role is to provide cover for their party as a whole, which, like the Republican Party, is also a party of billionaires, of war, of genocide, of horrific attacks against the working class. Let's just take another example. Trump's budget is a horrendous assault on Medicaid and also Medicare, but it is a continuation of a bipartisan attack. Medicare and Medicaid were both hard-fought and hard-won victories in 1965 from the millions of working people who participated in the civil rights movement and, especially importantly, the militant labor movements and strikes in the post-World War II era. Like all working-class victories under capitalism, Medicare and Medicaid were concessions forced from the ruling class and their political representatives under the threat of fighting movements. But from that very moment on, the American capitalist class has wanted to dismantle both programs. The first large-scale attack was not from Trump, but it came in 1997, led by Democratic President Bill Clinton, and was cheer-led by both Republicans and Democrats as part of the so-called Balanced Budget Act of 1997. Savagely attacking Medicare and Medicaid was a primary focus of that act. It included a total of nearly $150 billion of cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. That act also opened the door to privatization by establishing what's now called Medicare Advantage. Guess who also voted for this bill? Yes. Wasn't the hardest question. The labor leadership also, unfortunately, has mostly failed to build a fight back because they are also tied at the hip to the Democratic Party. The union named AFG, which represents federal public sector workers. The union named AFSCME, which represents state and county and local public sector workers, a union that Josie is a member of. The union that represents American Airlines pilots, the union that represents the Boeing machinists, the union that represents public sector laborers. They have, why am I reading out this list? This is a list of the unions who have donated to Adam Smith's campaign already for next year's campaign. And some of them, as far as I remember, donated to his campaign, have made some of their donations to their campaign after we entered the race. It's like, it's like they're especially making a point that we are not going to side, the leaderships of these unions are making the point that we're not going to be on the side of the anti-war campaign. We are going to explicitly side with the genocidal Congress member. Unfortunately, the same goes for most movement leaders and NGO leaders. The support for the Democratic Party, both overt and tacit, the tacit support being from the gatekeepers, this is a single most important obstacle to get movements moving forward. And that is why we have to reject both the dead ends. One dead end is for the groups and organizations who say, well, we're not going to engage in elections because electoral politics sucks. Of course, it's understandable that people feel turned off because most politicians in the Democratic and Republican parties as a whole are absolutely rotten to the core. However, we have to understand that wherever there is a potential for movements to rise up, whether it is through elections or through the labor movement or through social movements, on every such arena, there will be attempts by the billionaire class and their political representatives to corrupt the leadership. So shying away from one arena does not solve the problem. The only thing that solves the problem is actually building independent leadership, and that is why we have to avoid the other pitfall as well, which is the groups, for example, who protest against the war, but then refuse to speak up against the Democratic Party. We have to have an anti-war movement that is independent of both the Democratic and Republican parties. And as we start our fight to defend these three activists who have been unjustly arrested and face potential charges, and as we fight alongside every single anti-war activist across this nation who is facing retaliation, we have to remember we cannot rely on the courts. The courts and the criminal justice system, the police, all of these institutions serve the billionaire class and protecting their greed and their interests, not us. And it will be difficult. The path ahead is not easy. It is going to be difficult, but the times aren't ordinary times. And every time we feel discouraged, let's not forget the proud history of movements that when we fight, we can actually win, that we have won, and that we should call upon the courage that exists in each and every one of us. We are going to need tremendous solidarity in the coming months to stand with these activists who are facing these charges. I wanted to thank Seattle Against War and Seattle Revolutionary Socialists who have already come here in solidarity with us. Let's give them a round of applause. And we need to build for joint actions among all our organizations. Yes, we are going to have political disagreements, but we have to find a way, the left has to find a way where we discuss our political disagreements honestly and respectfully while not allowing those to be a barrier to build united action against the genocide, to defend the working class, and to go on the offensive on behalf of the working class, to win demands like the demands we are calling for in this campaign, like free health care for all, funded by taxing the rich, and national rent control, not to mention our first demand, which is ending the genocide, ending all US military funding, ending the brutal occupation of the Palestinian lands. If we agree on these demands, then it is our obligation towards the Palestinian people and towards the international working class to build united fight back. Adam Smith responded after this action as if he's the victim. Adam Smith, in his statement, he claimed that our peaceful protest that evening was, quote unquote, unacceptable. I'll tell you what's unacceptable. What's unacceptable is Smith enabling the genocide in Gaza by repeatedly voting for billions of dollars in military funding for Israel, a genocide that has killed nearly 500,000 Palestinians. What's unacceptable is Smith's multiple votes to ban US funding for the United Nations to distribute food and other services in Gaza. What's unacceptable is Smith having voted to create ICE and having backed the bipartisan assault on immigrants. What's unacceptable is Smith having voted for neoliberal bills to savagely cut Medicare and Medicaid. What's unacceptable is Smith's consistent warmongering record over his 28 years in office, including voting for the Iraq War, in which over 1 million people died. In his statement, Smith also claimed that he was, quote unquote, committed to open, respectful engagement with the people of the 9th District. It is dystopian and repugnant that someone who has played a leading role in ravaging millions upon millions of lives over 30 years, somebody who is actively supporting a genocide, talks about being committed to open, respectful engagement. There is nothing respectful about backing a genocide or calling anti-war protesters left-wing fascists, as Smith has done. Adam Smith nakedly serves the billionaire class, and we've seen his warmongering record is itself proof of that. Why? Because we have to ask, where do a lot of the military budget dollars actually end up? The military budget of US capitalism and imperialism is really a giant slush fund to pump tens of billions of dollars in wealth each year for the billionaires who own the majority shares in weapons manufacturing corporations and also the corporations that provide artificial intelligence and other types of intelligence and also the Microsoft Azure cloud, all kinds of services to carry out the genocide. So in other words, it's all of those corporations that we have seen through the United Nations reports about the Gaza genocide profiteers. It also includes corporations like Airbnb. Both the Democrats and the Republicans are tied at the hip to these billionaires. Neither of those parties stands for working people, and this is very important for us to understand. Why do both the Democratic and Republican parties continue funding the Israeli state even in the face of such unimaginable horrors and in the face of this incredible tide of opinion of people fighting back? 350 people in Sydney, Australia, just days ago. I mean, there is massive anger. There is no question about that. There is absolutely massive anger. And yet they are continuing to send money to Israel. Why? It is not that because Netanyahu has a strange maniacal hold over them. It is because Israel as a state, not the working people in Israel, many of whom now are starting to speak up against the genocide, but Israel as a state is a bulwark, it's an outpost for the interests of US capitalism and Western capitalism as a whole in an oil-rich region that is also geopolitically very important because of various factors, including the Suez Canal. That is why we are not going to end the genocide, much less the occupation, by putting any faith in the progressive Democrats, because the key word there is not progressive, the key word is Democrats. And they are a party of the billionaires. And this is also important. As the anger against the genocide mounts, many of the politicians, including egregiously Adam Smith, will try to whitewash their reputations, pretend they were always compassionate towards the Palestinians. They will issue statements, as Adam Smith has done, about how the people are starving and that needs to end, and Netanyahu needs to end the blockade and all of that. Well, two things. One, the movement claims the victory for this because it is under the fear of these movements and the resistance that these politicians are being forced to try and rehabilitate their careers. But point number two, we cannot let them whitewash their actions. We need to make it loud and clear in the 9th Congressional District of Washington State and nationally, Adam Smith has blood on his hands. He needs to be thrown out of office and put on trial for war crimes. We need, as I said before, most immediately, the anti-genocide movement needs political leadership that's independent of both genocidal parties. And it doesn't work for movement leaders to speak up against a genocide and then turn around and endorse the same Democrats who have either cheerleaded the genocide like Smith or progressive Democrats who have refused to fight against them. That is why campaigns like ours are urgently needed. But as far as I know, ours is the only congressional campaign of its kind. So I urge everyone to think about what this campaign represents. As Josie said, there are no guarantees that we can win, but we have a chance to win. We have a real shot to win, and we have to fight like hell to take that chance and win. And we have to keep in mind what it would mean for us to win. As I have pledged repeatedly, if we win the election, my inauguration, and really it will be our inauguration because it is our congressional campaign, and if we win, it will be our congressional position. If we win, our inauguration will be a call to action to tens of thousands of people to come to Washington, D.C., and we will be presenting a bill to end all U.S. military aid, and we will be demanding publicly which progressive Democrat is willing to sign on to it and help us fight it. I will continue to make it clear, as I already have, that I am not fighting to get elected in order to go there and caucus with AOC or Bernie Sanders or any progressive Democrats. I am going there to disrupt and shut down business as usual alongside tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of our fellow working people. But that is exactly why they will fight against us tooth and nail, and that is why we have to fight to pack these halls when we have these meetings, pack our mega canvas, and have everybody who can volunteer as many shifts as they can, because otherwise we will not be able to win. I just want to end by a couple of calls to action. Others will be talking about this in a few minutes, but we are having a campaign meeting in Federal Way on Monday, August 11th. So I hope you all are able to join us. It's a bit of a drive if you live in this neighborhood, but it will be worth it, I promise. And the day after, on August 12th, guess what our friend Adam Smith is doing? He is hosting an event that is called A Taste of the Ninth. It's supposed to be an invitation to, it's a fundraiser for his campaign, but apparently various restaurants are going to come there and serve different types of food, and it's going to be a celebration, as he calls it. He's also apparently going to give out compassion awards or justice awards or something like that. I mean, we're going to be outside. That's what I'm talking about. We want to protest outside. Who's going to be there? And grotesquely, in the midst of the mass starvation that Adam Smith is directly responsible for, their event announcement says, "Come hungry." Let us shame them by having a successful protest there, and let's make it clear, this is not a Taste of the Ninth event, it is a Taste for Genocide event, and we need to fight against it. So I urge everybody here to join us both on Monday and Tuesday, and I urge all the organizations that are here, let's fight together and let's organize, to begin with, most immediately, let's organize this protest outside the Taste for Genocide event together on Tuesday. Thank you so much, and solidarity.
Thank you so much, Kshama. Adam Smith, you can't hide. You are funding genocide. Adam Smith, you can't hide.
You are funding genocide.
Adam Smith, you can't hide.
You are funding genocide.
All right, thanks everyone. Next, we have Patrick, who's going to speak. He was one of the people who was egregiously arrested on Monday, and he's going to do a little finance appeal for us. So come on up, Patrick.
Thanks, everyone. Like Justin said, my name is Patrick Gibson. I'm a rank and file member of Workers Strike Back. I'm a volunteer on Kshama's congressional campaign. I'm a tech worker here in Seattle. And Monday night, I was arrested for protesting against Representative Adam Smith's ongoing support for the genocide in Gaza. I was handing out leaflets when I was handcuffed, put in the back of a cop car, and taken to jail. I've been charged with the crime of trespassing for peacefully protesting on the campus of a public school here in Washington. Adam Smith has supported basically every US war since he got into office 28 years ago in 1997. That includes the wars in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and the current bloody inter-imperialist proxy war in Ukraine. As Kshama mentioned, he's been a consistent champion of military funding for Israel, which is now being used to carry out ethnic cleansing and genocide against the Palestinian people. He's been the ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee for 15 years. And during that time, he's been rewarded by the weapons industry for the consistent supply of new countries to bomb that he delivers. Last election cycle, Smith received $500,000 combined from companies in the war industry. Over the course of his career, Adam Smith has had a hand in the death of easily millions of innocent people the world over. So my question is, where are the charges against Adam Smith? Unfortunately, the reality is Adam Smith is not alone in his relentless pursuit of bloodshed abroad in the interests of capitalists here in the US. When a vote came up in the House to cancel US funding for Israel's Iron Dome, as Kshama mentioned, only 6 congresspeople voted to end the funding. 422 voted to keep the money for Israeli war crimes flowing. One of those votes for the Iron Dome was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was elected as an ostensible socialist, promising to fight for the interests of working people in the halls of power. But unfortunately now, she is a powerful illustration of the fact that working class movements have no chance of changing the warmongering Democratic Party from the inside. Instead, we need to take an offensive approach. We need to build a powerful anti-war, anti-genocide movement that's independent of the Democratic Party. We need to build a movement that can build enough pressure to force them to take actions and take votes that they otherwise wouldn't. And we urgently need somebody in Congress who's going to use their elected office to help build that fight, which is why we need to send Kshama Sawant to Congress and we need to defeat Adam Smith. So in November 2023, Seattle became the first major city to pass a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. It was the strongest such resolution in the country, and that was accomplished despite strong disagreement from all the Democrats on the Seattle City Council. Initially, they refused to put the resolution on an agenda. Nobody would even second Kshama's proposal. But Kshama used her public platform to mobilize hundreds of ordinary working people to Seattle City Hall, demanding action from their elected officials, and ultimately, that movement is what forced the Democrats on the Seattle City Council to pass a resolution condemning Israel's war crimes and calling for an immediate ceasefire. That is the sort of representation that we need in Congress. We need a leader who will use her elected office to build movements that put Democratic Party politicians in an impossible bind, where they're forced to either give in to our demands or expose publicly the true extent of their moral bankruptcy. And as far as I know, not as far as I know, this is a fact. Kshama has been completely unique in doing this and stands apart from every other politician in the US today in doing it. She's been unwavering in her commitment to working people, in her promise to rely on the power of working class movements to win real victories instead of eking out meager gains through backroom compromises. And that's why Kshama's congressional campaign needs the maximum possible support from anybody and everybody who's able to donate. So I'm going to call out some numbers, and when I get to an amount that you're able to donate, raise your hand. A volunteer will come over and help process your donation on the spot. We're able to do one-time donations as well as monthly donations to help you spread things out over a longer period of time. AIPAC and the war industry are going to go all out to defeat Kshama's campaign for Congress. Adam Smith's police crackdown this week shows that he no longer feels he can just ignore us, that our campaign is gaining traction, and he's going to have to fight back. When he does that, he's going to have millions of dollars behind him. Last election cycle, AIPAC alone gave $300,000 to Adam Smith's campaign. So they'll do anything to stop a principled, anti-genocide, anti-war, pro-worker candidate from getting into office, and we should expect this time around they'll at least double their previous spending, realistically. In our fight against the right-wing recall that was trying to remove Kshama from the Seattle City Council, we raised $1 million to combat the onslaught against us. In this campaign, $1 million will not be enough to go up against the deep pockets of the weapons manufacturers and the Zionist lobby. Likely, we'll need to raise closer to $3 million over the course of this campaign, and we're off to a very strong start, having raised well over $150,000 since the launch of the campaign in June. But that means we have a big goal to meet. So I'm going to start high, and keep in mind that any amount you pledge tonight, we can help you spread out with a monthly donation, which we'll set up on the spot. I'll also say I was really moved by the tribute that Josie delivered to Linda D., who at the end of her life wanted to make sure that her remaining money went toward our movements to fight against the capitalist class and the warmongers in Congress. And so I want to start by asking if anybody in tribute to Linda D. can help this campaign kick warmongering Adam Smith out of office by giving the maximum donation that you can give during the primary campaign, which monthly would be $583 over 6 months, or would be $3,500 tonight. Would anyone here be able to do $1,000 tonight or pledge that amount over time by signing up for a monthly donation? Over 6 months, that's $167 monthly. The primary is a little further than 6 months away, so you could stretch it out a little more than that even if you wanted to. In 2017, a corporate lobbyist here in Seattle, Jamie Durkin, talked about his frustration lobbying the Seattle City Council on behalf of big landlords. He complained that council members, this is a quote, say all the right things in their offices, and then they get out on the podium and it all goes south. And he attributed this to the power of, his words, Sawant's army, meaning the movements of ordinary, working class people that Kshama organized to pack City Hall and force through things like the laundry list of renters' rights that we won over a decade of her council office. Because of that, he said, quote, anybody who spends $1 lobbying the Seattle City Council is wasting $1. So your donation tonight helps win a public platform that working people can use to make the richest people in the country waste as much of their ill-gotten gains as humanly possible. So who here tonight can give $250 to this campaign to help us defeat warmonger Adam Smith? Who here would be able to donate $100 tonight to the campaign? Please also keep your hand raised until somebody gets over to you, just so we can keep track of everybody. And I guess to wrap up, it's going to take millions of dollars to defeat Adam Smith and send Kshama to Congress. We don't raise that amount of money by getting a small number of maxed out donations from wealthy donors. That's actually what Adam Smith does in his campaigns. He gets a really small number of donations from a lot of really wealthy people. But we raise millions by getting tens of thousands of smaller donations from working people here in Washington and across the country. And that's how we're going to build a campaigning weapon against the genocidal right-wing Netanyahu regime and against US support for the Israeli military. So toward that end, we have a goal to reach 6,000 individual donors by the time of Kshama's official campaign launch rally in October. So any donation of any amount is going to help us reach that goal. So my last ask is, who here can donate $50, $25, even $1 or any other amount of money I haven't called out yet to help us elect the socialists that money can't buy to US Congress? You know, like Kshama said in this meeting, working people are really angry right now, but they're desperately looking for a direction and a way forward. And together, we're going to fight to give that direction to our movements. We're going to fight to get Kshama elected and bring the fight against the capitalists, their system, and their rotten two parties to the halls of Congress. Solidarity.
All right, thank you so much, Patrick, and thanks everyone for your donations to support this incredible campaign. So next we're gonna have a discussion, and we're gonna start with a few speakers from various groups who've come in solidarity with the arrested anti-genocide protesters. And yeah, so we'll have those speakers, and then we'll take stack. The total time will be about 50 minutes. Once we're done with the speakers in solidarity from other groups, we'll take stack, via raising hands as we've done in the past. So yeah, with that, we'll go to Josie to introduce our next speakers.
So our first speaker we have today in solidarity is Joel Sillinger, who is here from Seattle Against War.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to read off Seattle Against War's message of solidarity with the protesters. My name is Joel. This is the second time in recent history that Smith and his staff have escalated peaceful demonstrations into arrests, with the previous case being at a sit-in at his old office building. In our experience, he has attempted to do the same to us in multiple cases while protesting at his town halls and disrupting his immoral military recruitment collaboration at one of the poorest and most diverse high schools in the country. Shame. Smith and his signature style of phony victimhood and deflection claimed that these were violent protesters were part of a coordinated effort to shut down public dialogue. Not only are the accusations of violence unsubstantiated by any existing evidence or existing video from this incident, but also his so-called public dialogue was a sham, closed to the public with only a limited amount of people allowed to enter through an absurd lottery system. We must point out the hypocrisy of arresting constituents because they aren't allowed at Adam Smith's so-called public forum. Adam Smith has shut himself off from his constituents because he is afraid of the power of organized resistance against him. Since the sit-in last year, leading to 10 arrests, he has come under more and more pressure from an increasing coalition of organizations, including Seattle Against War. Also since then, he has been hiding, refusing to show his face to the public openly. He resorts to cowardly tactics like running virtual town halls where he screens all of the participants and their questions, and using raffle systems to admit a limited amount of people into his town halls. As Adam Smith enters the campaign trail, we'll be following him closely as we can, disrupting his activities wherever he stages them, and showing the King County community that there is no war profiteer that will go unpunished.
Hell yeah.
We will stand behind those arrested this Tuesday in their demands and look forward to continuing the struggle against Adam Smith and the wretched genocidal system that he represents. Thank you. Solidarity.
All right, thank you, Joel. Next, we'll have Alan Wheaton, who's here from Seattle Revolutionary Socialists.
Thank you, comrades. My name is Alan. I'm a member of the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists and our national organization, Firebrand Communists. I'd like to thank my comrades at Workers Strike Back for inviting me to speak here today, and all of you for taking the time out of your week for this crucial emergency meeting. I'm here today because we at SRS recognize that whenever working people have gained anything, it has been because we have fought for it. We know that we can't count on the Democrats or the Republicans to hand us any kind of justice. In fact, we've seen time and time again, and especially now, that we can count on them both to do quite the opposite. From decades of austerity cuts to social services meted out by Democrats and Republicans alike, making housing and health care inaccessible to vast swaths of the working class in the U.S., to warmongering and undermining the democratic efforts of working people abroad, to the full-throated and astronomical levels of funding to the genocide settler state of Israel. The two major parties of the U.S. have shown themselves to be enemies of working people everywhere. And what's more, this is not a mistake. This is not a broken or corrupt system to be reformed from within. All of this brutal injustice is the capitalist system working exactly as it is supposed to. To quote Vladimir Lenin, the executive of the bourgeois state is but a committee to manage the affairs of the entire bourgeoisie. So we can continue to limit our political horizons to choosing our oppressors every couple of years in the ballot box, or we can come together like we are today and practice the only kind of politics that can liberate humanity from the economic system that destroys countless human lives every day and is on the brink of killing us all. Last Saturday in Sydney, Australia, hundreds of thousands of protesters took to the streets to demand an end to the genocide in Gaza. Record numbers of working people around the world are standing up to the capitalist parties who have been claiming to represent them and exposing the brutality of their imperialist adventures. Great masses of people are finding their voices and unequivocally saying no, and this is crucial, but more is needed. Although we working people vastly outnumber the capitalist class, we are, as of now, under-organized for the work that is ahead of us. We need a party that represents our interests, a party that says no to war, no to borders and deportations, no to exploitation and oppression in all its forms, and yes to workers' democracy. It is our task to build this party, and I'm here to argue that it must be a revolutionary socialist party. The genocide in Gaza did not begin on October 7th, 2023. The Zionist entity has been at work violently displacing the Palestinian people and occupying their land for 75 years. And it has been revolutionary socialists who have consistently identified Zionism as a settler, colonial, and imperialist project and attributed it to the larger mission of global capitalism over this whole period, insisting that the overthrow of capitalism is the only thing that will bring an end to genocide, insisting that we must globalize the Intifada. When our comrades from Workers Strike Back were arrested on Monday, protesting outside Adam Smith's so-called town hall, this is the message they were carrying. They weren't taken into custody for speaking truth to power. Adam Smith and his buddies know the truth. To them, our lives and the lives of our Palestinian counterparts are inconsequential and fully expendable. No, they were taken off the street for speaking truth to the powerless. This is impermissible to them. This is a part of how we threaten their power, and they know that all too well. When the ruling class sicks the cops on us, we know we're doing something right. When they employ rhetoric against us, like accusing us of anti-Semitism for saying no to genocide, even when a huge proportion of us are Jewish, we know we're doing something right. They fear our power. In some ways, they recognize our power more than we do. Building a revolutionary party may seem like a very tall order, especially here in the belly of the beast, where the working class has been twisted and pitted against itself from day one and then repeatedly beaten back by the good cop, bad cop, two-party capitalist system. But to quote Australian Marxist Mick Armstrong, from little things, big things grow. And today, here at this meeting, you have not only the opportunity to flex the muscles of workers' democracy by helping to organize an event in defense of our comrades and against the capitalist war machine, but also to join a revolutionary organization and begin to undertake the work that will bring about the party we need. Now, I'm not here to tell you who to vote for, or even whether or not you should vote at all. But I will tell you that as revolutionary socialists, we don't vote for our class enemies. You may find someone on your ballot who has proven themselves not to be a class enemy. Hint, they won't have a D or an R next to their name. You may even find one such person here in this room. But if you do vote, please, 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 don't let that be the only political action you take. Whoever we send to represent us in a government built by and for capitalists will accomplish nothing without a mass movement demanding action and accountability. And no matter how many of those representatives we are able to send, it is us, the workers, not government officials, who will bring down the brutal, repressive, genocidal capitalist system once and for all. If you want to learn more about the SRS and Firebrand, get involved in our organizing, or join a socialist study group, find us at seattlerevolutionarysocialists.org and firebrand.red. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Next, I'd like to invite Rizwan to come and speak. He's an anti-genocide activist who is a big supporter of Abandoned Harris, an organizer, and was recently egregiously arrested for a civil disobedience against the genocide.
So I'll correct that. I was not arrested, but a case filed against me. It's interesting what we are going through nowadays. I'm pretty numb. I was angry, frustrated, was crying, traveling all over the U.S., attending demonstration, screaming my lungs out. And I realized I can't make any difference. I start feeling helpless. And the more I feel helpless, the more I wanted to work harder. I was thinking, what can I do to make some changes? I hate writing. I sat down in front of my laptop, started writing, sending emails, posting, opened my X account. And I started seeing some differences. Some of my posts, only 10 people visit, some 10, 20, 30. One day I saw, oh my God, 50,000. Other day, 40,000. You know, the time has changed. They used to manipulate us with these mainstream media, and they lie to us. They've been doing the same thing, genocide, for many years. It's not something new. You know, they kill over 3 million people in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia. But we didn't see these images, what we are seeing today. They have done the same thing. They burned people alive. They buried people alive. But we didn't see those images. Now we are able to see. But what can we do? All my friends spoke eloquently everything what I wanted to say here. But I'm not helpless. I can make a difference. Every day I get up, I have a goal to send messages to my friend, even my Zionist friend, hardcore Republican friends, hardcore Democrats who believe in supporting Adam Smith and Obama and other people. And slowly, slowly, I'm changing their mind. They're getting agreed. They didn't believe that there was a genocide was going on. They didn't believe anything. But now they start believing. I used to put a gas from Chevron gas station. I stopped doing it, and I started telling hundreds of my friends. I used to love Starbucks. It's been a year and a half, I stopped going to Starbucks, stopped going to McDonald's, stopped going. You gotta implement inside in you. Not to come and attend and listen fiery speeches. I used to give fiery, emotional speeches, and people hear and people go and then they forget. We have to start talking to our neighbors, our friends, sending messages, donating even little amount of money, as my friend says, even donate $1. Try to convince, going door to door, start knocking doors and telling people that this is a war criminal here. If we start doing these things, then we can make some difference. We have a lot of work to do. If you really want to stop the genocide, if you really want to get rid of all these evil people who've been supported by a special interest group, AIPAC spent $100 million and they receive $100 billion. It's a business. They are doing business. They put this puppet into the power so they can make money for themselves. It's taking human life doesn't mean anything to them. They can kill hundreds of people and then they can still play with their grandkids and have dinner with their children and their wife because they are heartless. They don't care. We have to go out there and put our time, energy, effort, whatever we can. We have to tell the good people, listen, your tax dollar is going to kill innocent children. You know, I supported Barack Obama. I even attended his inauguration. He killed more Muslims than any other president. He deported more people than any other, And then he goes to Alexandria in Egypt and gives a beautiful speech to Muslims. These guys are professional criminals. for them is killing. It's no big deal. Nothing. But we have a job to do. We have to start talking to everybody. In homes, little gathering. Don't do one fundraiser. Even everybody should organize a fundraiser. Invite their neighbors. Don't worry about that you're going to raise $10,000 for Kshama. Even raise $500 or $200. Just invite a bunch of people. The more people will listen to her message, the more people will come out to vote. We can raise $10 million, but if people not come out to vote, then it's pointless. We have to change people's mind. They're thinking that this is wrong and this is right. And then I'm just going to say a very famous quote, which Albert Einstein said almost 70 years ago. The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil. The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. So please, become an active member. You know, when first time when I heard Kshama Sawant name, even in I have Eastern blood, even I had a hard time pronouncing her. And she became a central figure of Seattle. People even forgot what she looked like, what her name is. They just got in love with her message. You know, that's what we have to spread. We have to go out there and knock doors. If you live in Adam Smith district, you're not moral, it's religious, whatever you believe, your obligation to go and talk to your neighbors and tell them that do not support baby killers. Just imagine mother watching her little children while she's dying. Just imagine the little children watching their mother dying. I have seen hundreds of videos. Little kids, their legs chopped off. These guys are war criminals. There's no word in a dictionary which I can tell. I can scream my lungs out, get upset, cry, but it's a time for action. Go out there and tell people, show them the video, tell them what they are responsible for it. This is the only way we're going to make a changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rizwan. That's very moving. Next, we have Calvin, who was also one of the people arrested on Monday, who's going to speak. We've got about 25 minutes left for a discussion. So if other people would like to get on stack and come up to the discussion, you can raise your hand and we can add you to the list. So I'll invite Calvin up.
I'm Calvin. As Josie said, I'm one of the 3 people who were arrested on Monday for peacefully protesting in Adam Smith's town hall. Like Patrick and M, I was arrested for the alleged and apparently unacceptable crime of handing out leaflets, chanting, and speaking out against the genocide. What is unacceptable and criminal, of course, is Adam Smith and his whole rotten fucking record. Smith talks about civil discourse. What is civil about 500,000 Palestinians being slaughtered in Gaza? What's civil about mass starvation and shooting those going to get food aid? What was civil about Smith's vote for the Iraq War, in which over 1 million people died? Last year, Adam Smith made a statement calling anti-genocide protesters left-wing fascists. Apparently, this is a hint about his ideas of civility. He called for anti-genocide protesters to be arrested, and on Monday he got his wish, and 3 of us were. Of course, we are 3 people among thousands who've been arrested for opposing the horrors that Israel is carrying out in Gaza and the West Bank. And by the way, during our action, we were approached by attendees at this carefully controlled event, or at least it was intended to be controlled, attendees who supported our action and wanted to get involved. The tide of opinion has turned very dramatically against this genocide, and Adam Smith is trying to hold on in this context, and we aren't going to allow him to. We aren't going to allow him to whitewash his crimes. There has been a relentless crackdown on the movement against the genocide in Gaza. That crackdown didn't begin under Trump, of course, it began under Biden. It was and remains the worst such attack on an anti-war movement since the Vietnam War. It is the worst crackdown on campus protesters since 1968. It has, of course, escalated under Trump, but it has been a bipartisan project every step of the way. The Democrats have a horrific record on this, and history will not absolve them any more than it will absolve the Third Reich. And that's not hyperbole, this is a Holocaust. The progressive Democrats have played a particularly insidious, continuous role of enabling this Holocaust, voting again and again for military funding, posing this genocide as though it is self-defense by Israel, self-defense, 75 years of ethnic cleansing, and now this brutal genocide. These Democrats, progressive Democrats, have even refused to talk about it because they fully support the agenda of U.S. imperialism, which is rooted in using Israel as a forward bulwark for their interests in the oil-rich Middle East. The lives of working people and the poor in the region don't and never have mattered for them one bit. At the No Kings protest, with 500,000 dead in Gaza, Pramila Jayapal and other Democrats there, had literally nothing to say about the genocide in Gaza. In just the last few weeks, AOC, Pramila Jayapal, and all but a handful of progressives voted for more military funding for Israel. In just the last few weeks, these so-called progressives continued to say Israel has a right to defend itself. AOC justified her vote for $500 million more, saying it was for defensive weapons. There is absolutely nothing defensive or defensible about it. Iron Dome, David's Sling, all these weapons have allowed Israel to carry out these atrocities with impunity. And now, not only is mass starvation taking place, Palestinians are being shot and killed for the crime of attempting to get food aid. Just a few days ago, Bernie Sanders again refused to use the word genocide after being repeatedly asked by a reporter. Only yesterday, Pramila Jayapal finally used the word genocide in a statement after nearly 2 years of this horror show. As Kshama said, these people are gatekeepers. Their role is to look just progressive enough to keep working people and young people inside their bankrupt fucking party. But they are performers. They take turns being the ones to make the very worst votes. They take turns being ones to raise hopes that the party can be reformed. It can't. And we have to call them out by name, and that's important. And it's important, I think, that Kshama sent out a tweet this afternoon calling out Jayapal to stand up against, demanding that she stand up against the brutal crackdown on peaceful protesters. And I think it's important that everyone share that post. I think it's also important that we keep up the pressure in every possible way against Adam Smith, as with this protest next Tuesday in Des Moines. I hope everybody can be there at that protest. We need to continue to demand that the charges against the peaceful protesters, all of them, be dropped. So there's a new book out about the genocide called One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This. It's by Omar El-Akkad. And I think that about sums it up. And that is what the Democrats are trying to do right now. As the tide of opinion turns so decisively and furiously against them, they are trying to backtrack and make a pretense. But we can't let them do that. It is absolutely urgent that we back Kshama's independent socialist campaign for Congress. one of the exceedingly few campaigns in the country that has taken a clear position against the genocide, the occupation, and calling for an end to all military funding for Israel, and an end to this crackdown on the protest movement. I think all of us here need to get active in this campaign because the movement needs a concrete way, a vehicle to oppose the genocide and build maximum pressure for an end to all military funding for Israel and an end to the occupations of Gaza and the West Bank once and for all. You know, we all have been very clear, I think, to our friends, to our coworkers, that we're against this. But in order for us to stop this, we need concrete, organized action. We need vehicles to do this, and I think this campaign is the best one at this moment to do that. There are others, of course. This is absolutely a Holocaust, and not one politician who has voted to fund this genocide deserves one more working class vote. I think we need to get that message across as clearly as possible, and that we need a new party for working people. This party needs to be done. It's not going to happen automatically, but it needs to be done. As long as it stands in the way, we won't have a new party. We need to completely expose the party itself and all of its politicians. That is the only way. We have to ruthlessly and relentlessly expose this party and every one of these politicians. The least they deserve, all of them, is to be driven out of office. But it's not going to happen on its own. I agree with Rizwan. If we want any of this to happen, one of the best things we can do right now is to go door to door in the congressional district and call out Adam Smith and fight for every possible vote for a revolutionary socialist. No revolutionary socialist has ever been elected to the U.S. Congress. And that's not an accident, of course. But I can't think of anything that the U.S. capitalist class wants less than Kshama Sawant in the halls of Congress. And I think there is no better way to ruin their year, their decade, than to make that happen. If we can do this, it will be a political earthquake that Washington, D.C. hasn't seen, I think, in our lifetimes. It would just be one seat, but I think with that one seat, Kshama Sawant and our movement could turn national politics upside down in the same way we did in Seattle over the last decade, and these people still haven't recovered. They have fucking nightmares over what happened during that decade. The corporate landlords are still trying to undo what we did, as Kshama spoke about earlier. Kshama was just featured in mailers in different elections in this campaign, including Katie Wilson's, because they all of them recognize that there has been no more decisive impact in politics here in Seattle than what revolutionary socialists did over the last decade. This isn't just another election campaign. This is a Bolshevik election campaign. This is about using it as a vehicle for what is really needed, which is overturning these parties and capitalism itself.
Thank you, Calvin. Next, we have Maddie on stack. And then if anyone else would like to have a pause. Yeah? Did I hear a question? Someone say? Okay, after Maddie, we can have a question come up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. My name's Maddie. I'm a member of Workers Strike Back. I'm also a member of Revolutionary Workers. And I am just feeling like very fired up after these incredible speeches, but also I'm feeling incredibly fired up because I feel like we have so much fucking work to do, and we have ample fucking opportunity to do it. Right now, we are sitting in a position where it has been made abundantly clear that Adam Smith is scared shitless. This motherfucker knows that we can take him on and we can win, and he wouldn't send out 15 plus police cars, I might be exaggerating, but there were a lot of police cars at a small town hall where peaceful protesters were chanting and handing out flyers. We have an opportunity to create the movement necessary to take on a Democrat who has fought to fund every single war since he took office, and we have an opportunity to create a working class movement in the United States that can take on and end a genocide that we are enabling right now. this is not just an issue of District 9. This isn't just an issue of Seattle. We have a responsibility here to take on and fight for this campaign, but this is beyond just us. And, I want to speak to the fact that we're live streaming this because this is a national movement and this is an international movement to fight against this genocide. We are watching grapple with the reality of what the Israeli state has carried out in their names with their tax dollars, much as we have watched the works of the United States do the same thing. If we want to end this genocide, if we want to end deportations that are being carried out in our communities, if we want to fight for rent control and fight to have health care that we can afford so people are not dying without getting health care needs met, we have to mobilize. We are going to be calling for participation in different events coming up, and I think it's incredibly important that everybody in this room signs up, get involved, get active. This is not just a campaign, this is a working class movement, and we have a responsibility to make sure it succeeds. And beyond that, we have a responsibility to carry this out to our communities. I think that what Rizwan was saying was really important. It is so critical that we build the movement behind this campaign. The only way that we can hope to bring this fight to Adam Smith and win, and I do genuinely think that we can win, I think we can beat this motherfucker, is by bringing the working class into action. That is the only way that we were able to win any of the victories that we can claim when Kshama was in office and city council. We want a tax on Amazon. They are not ever going to give up money willingly. And we want a tax on Amazon to the tune of several millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars that funds our affordable housing in Seattle that we fought for, that we pulled from their hands by having a working class movement that was able to fight them and win. And that is what we have to do now.
Thank you, Maddie. And we got a question. If you want to come up here to, have you? Yes, we have a flyer. I believe there's some out on the back table. After we do the volunteer appeal at the end, someone can come and talk with you about door knocking and what that's been like. And yeah, we can get you signed up for a shift if you want to get out there. And then we have Ben on stack, and then it's Ben and then M, and then I'm going to close stack.
Hey everybody, my name is Ben. I am a member of Workers Strike Back. I just want to echo this momentum we have for a call to action. I have, in the last couple of months, started volunteering for the campaign. I've gone out canvassing and door knocking, phone banking. And so I kind of wanted to share my experience as somebody who's starting up with that, being a little newer to it. I am also I am Jewish, and from day one I was brainwashed by the Zionist lobby through my family, my congregation, my organizations. So it was actually really kind of like scary to go out and talk to people about the desperate need to end the military occupation in Gaza and in Palestine. But I just want to share that in the last few months, it's been great to see how much people want to hear this. People like this is what everyone wants to hear. These are what working class people are looking for. And you know, I understand the feelings of feeling numb and disillusioned, but when we start talking about these demands, we start talking about the wins that we have created, and we start talking about this movement, people see that it's viable. People want to join in, and it's fantastic to see. And I get great responses every time I come out to volunteer. So I really urge that if you can, in any capacity, if you can phone bank, we have phone banks over Zoom, if you can show up to a tabling, if you can go out and knock some doors, any person that you can talk to, if you talk to 2 people, if you talk to 5 people, if you talk to 10 people, that's how we grow this movement for the working class. Everybody who has been fighting for these movements has been incredibly helpful as I've gone along and started to volunteer. I was not, as I said, was not very comfortable the first time, but it's gotten very easy as time has gone on, and there's great leadership in this organization to help everybody push this movement. So thank you.
Everyone, my name's M. Smith. I was also one of the 3 protesters who was arrested for peacefully protesting, handing out leaflets, chanting outside of Adam Smith's town hall. I'm also the campaign manager for Kshama's campaign. And Ben is right, working class people want to fight. Working class people also want leaders who want to fight. They don't want sellouts like AOC, like Bernie Sanders, like Pramila Jayapal, who do nothing for working class people, who vote to fund a genocide, who vote to break a railroad strike, who sell out to the Democratic Party at every turn. Working people want leaders like Kshama Sawant, an independent who has a track record of fighting and winning for working people. We launched this campaign 2 months ago. Since then, more than 1,500 people, well over that, from all 50 states and Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico have donated to this campaign. We've raised well over $150,000. The median donation is $25, which means there's very nearly, if not more than 1,000 people who have donated $25 or less to this campaign. This is a working class campaign. Well over 100 volunteers have come out, more than 600 hours of tabling, door knocking, phone banking just during the first 2 months of this campaign. We've put up more than 1,500 campaign posters around District 9. We've had campaign events in Seattle, Renton, Federal Way, Des Moines, Washington, all in the 9th Congressional District. We've also had campaign tables in Olympia, Washington, Boston, Peoria, Illinois, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Rochester and Owatonna, Minnesota, Fort Lauderdale and Wilton Manors, Florida, Kansas City, Missouri. We've had phone bankers come from San Francisco, Indianapolis, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Kalamazoo, Michigan, New York City. We have a table planned in Kalamazoo, Michigan for next Sunday. There's people all around this country that are not just supporting this campaign, but are building this campaign. We have thousands of people who have signed our petition to support Kshama, to support the demands, end the genocide in Gaza, no military aid, no occupation, free healthcare for all, tax the rich, stop the deportations, shut down the detention centers, and we need rent control, make corporate landlords pay. That's what this campaign is fighting for. This campaign is an expression, the support for this campaign is an expression of the growing anger at the genocide, the growing anger at both of these corporate parties and the system of capitalism and US imperialism itself. There are 400,000 people, more than that, 400,000 people who have been killed in Gaza, who have been murdered by the Israeli state, nearly 500,000 people. We cannot accept these lies that are repeated by the mainstream media of 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 people who have been killed. It is nearly 500,000 people, based on scientific estimates of The Lancet, that have been murdered in Gaza. We have to be determined in repeating that number and giving the true number of how many people who have been killed in this genocide. We have a responsibility to do that. The genocide and the mass starvation in Gaza are exposing to millions of people the rot and the brutality of US imperialism, and all of the parties around the world that are defending this system. We've just seen a new party launched in the UK. We need a new party, a new working class party in the United States of America. Last month, in this room, we took a solidarity picture in solidarity with Palestine Action, Kneecap, and Bob Villan, who have faced repression by the British state. University of Michigan students, which have already been mentioned, are facing repression for their opposition to the genocide. We saw 300,000, as Brother Alan already said, 3,000 people march across the Sydney Harbour Bridge in Australia protesting this genocide. Support for the Israeli state is at a record low. 9%, it's stunning, 9% of young people approve of the Israeli state's actions in genocide. We have to drive that number lower, and we have to build mass movements to fight back. We have faced this kind of repression before. Kshama, for 10 years on the city council, faced vicious attacks. A lawsuit against Kshama for calling the police killing of Che Taylor what it was, which was murder. Massive attacks on her because they wanted to make an example of her. We faced a right-wing recall effort against Kshama. $1 million poured in to try to defeat her. That was part of a systematic effort to crush protest movements around the country. It wasn't just Kshama. Again, it was thousands of protesters, thousands of activists around the country who were facing those attacks. How did we fight back? We went on the offensive. During that recall campaign, we fought to win historic renters' rights. We packed City Hall. During that recall campaign, we won 6 months' notice of rent increases in Seattle. During that recall campaign, we won economic evictions assistance for anyone facing eviction, that if your landlord raises your rent 10% or more, they have to pay you 3 months' rent to be able to pay moving costs. During that recall campaign, we won just cause evictions protections in the city. During that recall campaign, we extended the eviction moratorium. We won hazard pay, fought alongside grocery workers to win hazard pay for them, $4 an hour during the pandemic, which the Democrats shamefully repealed. We stood with striking carpenters. We went out to their picket line and struck with them. We also understood that it was crucial during that to build a powerful campaign to defend Kshama against those attacks and to defeat the right-wing recall. They spent $1 million to try to defeat Kshama. We raised $1 million right back from 12,000 people from all 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico, 1,500 volunteers in that campaign, 120,000 doors knocked. We fought back and we won. We gave big business, the Democratic Party, and the Republicans a black eye during that campaign. We have to fight these charges. We have to fight against the repression of all anti-war activists everywhere. But we also have to go on the offensive. That's why along this campaign, we're fighting for free health care by taxing the rich $5 billion a year in Seattle through a ballot initiative. We have to go on the offensive and give the warmongers a black eye, and I couldn't agree more with Calvin. I cannot think of a better black eye to give them than defeating Adam Smith, driving him out of office, sending Kshama Sawant to U.S. Congress, and building a mass movement against the genocide to win free health care for all, to stop the deportations, and to win rent control. So everyone here, everyone watching on the live stream, support this campaign. This is how we fight back, is by going on the offensive, by building a movement. Come out August 12th, 5 p.m. for this Taste for Genocide event that Adam Smith is hosting. We have to have a mass number of people there to shut down that event, to talk to working people. We should phone bank. We have phone banks every Saturday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Come out to those phone banks. A meeting in Federal Way this coming Monday at 6 p.m. Come out to that at the Federal Way Community Center. Federal Way tables and door knocking this weekend, door knocking in the Central District on Wednesday. Donate, tell friends. Let's build a movement, fight these charges, send Kshama Sawant to Congress.
When we fight,
we win.
When we fight,
we win.
When we fight,
we win.
Woo! All right, so we got to get fighting. So now we're going to have Sam come up and do our volunteer signups.
We are fighting to build the strongest anti-war, pro-worker campaign in the country. We're taking on warmongering career Democratic Congressman Adam Smith and his powerful backers in the Zionist lobby, the weapons industry, big tech, and Wall Street. Against Smith, we're pitting the independent socialist who money can't buy, Kshama Sawant, and her decade of movement leadership and unmatched victories for the working class in Seattle. Smith is scared. His town hall in Renton on Monday shows that, firstly in that he felt forced to hold a town hall event at all to try to launder his genocidal record, as Democrats and Republicans across the country cancel their own town halls to avoid facing angry voters. But secondly, we know that Smith is scared because after failing to prevent a genuinely democratic discussion about his war crimes and billionaire backers, he doubled down on demonizing peaceful protesters and using the state against them. The capitalist courts and the corporate media have always been and will always be weapons used by big business and the Democratic Party against those who fight unapologetically for and alongside working people and against imperialist war and genocide. This was true every step of the way during Kshama's decade on the Seattle City Council and in the years since where the corporate council Democrats have worked to undermine our hard-fought renters' rights and minimum wage victories. And we'll always be waging an uphill battle on the terrain of campaign finances, where we're pitting working people carrying the burden of a spiraling cost of living crisis and never-ending attacks from the Democrats and Republicans. We're pitting working people against the billionaires profiting off of all of our misery. But the one thing above all that we can't afford, that we cannot afford, is complacency. Kshama's congressional campaign has working class donors from all 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico with a median donation of just $25 because working people all across this country are inspired by the fighting approach that has shifted the balance of power in Seattle, winning victories that have rippled out far and wide and improved living standards for workers far beyond this city. That fighting legacy would not have been possible without Kshama's fighting leadership and revolutionary socialist perspective. It also would not have been possible without the tens of thousands of working class people who got organized during Kshama's decade on city council. People knocking doors, canvassing on street corners and at festivals, calling supporters and speaking and chanting at public comment. This is how Kshama and fellow socialists and working class activists built the movements that defeated Amazon, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Democrats time and time again. Fighting the charges against these peaceful anti-genocide protesters and building the strongest anti-genocide pro-worker congressional campaign in the country means we need this on a massive scale throughout Washington's 9th Congressional District. We have a target of 500 volunteers getting active with the campaign in the first months through October 12th. This means hundreds of busy working people carving out a couple hours out of our busy schedules and to talk to people who've likely never heard of Kshama and her fighting record, with the turnover in this city and especially the people outside of Seattle's District 3. Everyone should now have a volunteer card, a volunteer sign-up sheet in front of you. You can look at the shifts that are listed there and check off the ones that you can commit to attending. But make sure that you don't leave today without handing one of these back to one of the volunteers who handed them out, showing which shifts that you can sign up for. We have several shifts this week in Federal Way to build for the community meeting there on Monday. And we also have the protesting Adam Smith's Taste for Genocide event as well. I believe that one's on the community meeting on Monday and then the protesting Adam Smith's event on Tuesday. We'll start with the one on Tuesday. Who can make it to protest Adam Smith's Taste for Genocide event? That's what we like to see. That's beautiful. We also have the community meeting in Federal Way. That's on Monday at 6 p.m. at the Federal Way Community Center, Monday, August 11th. Who here can commit to attending that event and helping volunteer to run that event? Awesome. So mark that down on your sheets and then keep your hands raised. Who here can make any other of the volunteer shifts listing, including building for the Federal Way meeting and the protest on Tuesday, as well as door knocks closer to here, phone banking on Zoom, any other shifts? Amazing. And then finally, one more. Mark that one down and then keep your hands raised. This last question is the easiest. Who here can mark their calendars and plan to attend our major kickoff rally at Langston Hughes Performing Arts Center on Sunday, October 12th? That's everyone in the room. This is how we build grassroots momentum. This is how we reach working class people. This is how we fight to build on the legacy of Kshama's city council tenure and send the socialist money can't buy to U.S. Congress.
All right, thank you, everyone. Make sure to hand in those volunteer cards. And that's the end of our meeting. We'll do one last chant to close it out. Adam Smith, you can't hide. You are funding genocide. Adam Smith, you can't hide. You are funding genocide. Adam Smith, you can't hide. You are funding genocide. Thank you, everyone.